It's Thursday, 5:30 p.m. here in Singapore, and you're watching The Big Story, where we will discuss the hottest topic of the day and explain why it matters. I'm Haryanto Diman, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. The US-China trade war comes to a truce as a partial trade agreement has finally been signed by the world's two biggest economies. The so-called Phase 1 deal is meant to be the first in a series of agreements that will bring an end to the trade conflict that has shaken markets, increased consumer costs, and caused a slowdown in the global economy. Here's a quick summary of the deal. For the next 2 years, Beijing has committed to buy at least $200 billion worth of American goods and services, more than it did in 2017. The additional purchases are made up of around $77 billion in manufacturing, $52 billion in energy, $38 billion in services, and $32 billion in agricultural goods. To find out more about the implications for Singapore and the region of this trade deal, here are highlights from the Asian Insider ST's Analysis talk show.
So, today, joining us to discuss this Phase 1 agreement and its implications are Curtis Chin from Bangkok and Vikram Khanna from Singapore. Curtis is a former US ambassador to the Asian Development Bank and an Asia Fellow at the Milken Institute. Vikram is an associate editor at the Straits Times. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
So, Curtis, perhaps I should start with you. Does this show that tariffs work? I mean, there is a lot in this agreement. China has conceded a lot, although we know that the tougher issues are supposed to be in a Phase 2 agreement, and we don't know when that's going to be. But so far, do you think tariffs have worked?
Absolutely, Nirmal. For good and for bad, the signing of this trade deal, this Phase 1 trade deals, shows that indeed President Trump's approach of putting in tariffs has worked in many ways. I'm no fan of tariffs. I've been a longtime advocate for free trade and fair trade, but we're at this situation today because of 3 decades, let's say, of engagement with China, which has led to a relationship that does need to be readjusted, to be rebalanced. And through President Trump's implementing of something that many people were not quite fans of, myself included, of tariffs, we have at least made this initial step forward. I have to say, give President Trump due credit for where we are. I think in reality, it's a pause. It's an initial resetting of this relationship. It's a clear political win for President Trump. But there's so much more that needs to be done. It's not just implementation of this Phase 1 deal, but addressing some of the much more difficult challenges that China has posed to many U.S. administrations and many countries around the world, including here in Southeast Asia. But to sum it up, indeed, tariffs have worked so far, but let's see where it leads to next.
Vikram, I'd like to bring you in for just give you the last word, just 20 seconds. So do you feel more sanguine now about Phase 1 deal? Do you think markets and economies in the region will see, a little bit of a return?
Well, I would give it a slightly more cautious welcome. I mean, I think, as I mentioned, I think it is quite fragile. I think it's not clear, at least from China's point of view, it's not clear what they need to really do to get under the sort of 360 billion or 250 billion, 25% tariffs that remain in place. There's no schedule for tariff rollback. There's nothing to say that, okay, if you do this, we'll roll back by this much. If you do this, we'll roll back by this much. It's all up in the air. I think this is a deal that both sides can walk away from quite easily. China can decide that the US is not responding by reducing tariffs fast enough, so we're going to stop buying American soybeans. America can say China is not living up to its commitments, so we're going to snap back on the tariffs. So I think this deal is subject to a lot of uncertainty. I mean, it's welcome. It's always good to have a deal. A deal is better than no deal, and this is not a comprehensive deal. So I would give it only a very cautious welcome.
Okay, great. Vikram, thank you very much. Curtis, thank you very much. That was great. Thanks a lot for your time, and have a great day out there.
Thanks, Nirmal. Bye-bye.
So, lots of big numbers in the Phase 1 deal with China, and President Trump also is going to get his US-Mexico Canada agreement, the USMCA, passed by the Senate and signed into law. So he will have plenty to talk about at his rallies, and it will go down very well with his support base as the campaign gears up.
Yeah, now that's an excerpt of the latest episode of the Asian Insider on the US-China trade deal. To catch the full episode of the Asian Insider as Nirmal and his guests discuss the implications of this trade deal on Singapore and the region, you can head over to the Straits Times channel on YouTube or Facebook.